What's up, guys? So this is an event that I got to work the last weekend, and this is called the 2017 BMW GS Trophy Qualifier. Basically, there was a group of 24 people on BMW GSs of any kind. You can ride a GS of any kind by BMW to participate in this. And I think there was 3 or 4 events around the United States, and there's going to be some winners picked that will go on to Mongolia to represent the United States. So this was put on out at Bixby, Missouri, at my local club grounds called the MTRA, the club that I'm a part of. It's a really good group, and it's really awesome out there. And they put on events like this for the AMA and other organizations. So it's a really good thing to be a part of. Anyways, this was the first event here. Basically, you get judged on things like stalling the bike, stopping the bike, knocking cones over, putting your feet down, and you get points taken away. So like this, you would have started with 10 points, and each cone that you knock over would be minus 1 point. Every time you put your foot down would be minus 1, and if you had stalled the bike or stopped it. I didn't get any on film here of anyone actually stopping the bike, because I actually started filming after the first few people went, because I'm actually scoring the event as well. We've got one guy at the beginning and then me in the middle, and we're both marking down points. So at the end, we would come together and give a final score for the event. But basically, this one wasn't too bad. It looks easier than it is, let me tell you, because these are some big dips and some big hills, and these are big motorcycles going through here. So it looks a lot easier than it actually was. So don't let the camera fool you. It was pretty difficult for a lot of it. It's a lot of river rock to go through. All right, so this is the next event. I didn't get to score this one. There were some other people scoring it, so I was kind of on the sidelines just to help out, putting cones back and that kind of thing. So I did get to film in between helping. So sometimes during this, I'll shut the camera off, and that'll be because I'll be running to help somebody, whether it's one of the volunteers or one of the people on the motorcycles. So anyway, this was one of the harder ones in my opinion. So you can see they start and they got to come down, go between 2 cones on a really, really sharp turn into the creek bed where it's a lot deeper gravel, and it's hard to get traction through here. And then you can see him coming up here. He's got to go by this log under this tree. That tree right there looks straight up, but it's not. It leans out over the bank. So then they got to go around, and he's went on the outside of the cones. You're supposed to go in between those 2 orange cones in the distance, and then you got to go up and around another snake turn out of the creek bed. It's very, very difficult. I don't think I'd have been able to do it on either of my bikes, and they're smaller than this. So these guys are out here on these huge 500-pound motorcycles, some of them more. And in this creek bed, your tires just wash out like nothing from the gravel. So this is one of the participants from, I believe he was from Skunk Works Moto up in Springfield, Missouri. This guy had some problems during the day, but he kept getting up and going and going and going. So you'll see him have a few problems here, but it's extremely difficult through here. And you'll notice that he's dropped the bike and stalled it. So that just means he's basically out on some of these. If you stall the bike, that automatically deducts all your points from the test. And if you drop the bike, that automatically deducts all the points from your test. Now, if he dabs, which means putting your foot down, that would be minus 1 point. If he knocks a cone over, that would be minus another point. So basically, he's already out at this point, and he's just trying to get out of the creek bed and get on to the next test site. Like I said, this was definitely one of the harder ones, but one of the more entertaining ones from the viewer standpoint. Now I'm down at the same test site in the creek bed, so we can get a little bit better view. So you can see him coming through the cones here. He's got to go around this log, which is sticking out quite far, and then underneath this tree here without hitting your head or your shoulders. Kind of ride up on the bank there and around through the cones, and then out of the creek bed through another S turn of cones, and that would be basically it. And there's a finish spot that you can, do whatever. You won't lose points after that spot, but you got to get to that point. So you can see how big these bikes are. I mean, you get them just a little bit off balance and they fall right over.
Yes, it is.
So anyways, this was definitely one of my favorite test sites, even though there was only a couple people to make it through really well. All right, so this next test course here basically is a reverse S, and you've got to come up the hill a little bit off camber and go down a little bit more, and then come back up, all in between all of these cones. So if you just watch the riders here, you can kind of see what they're attempting to do. That first rider there, he went completely off course, so he lost all his points immediately. This rider here, you can see he just puts a foot down, so he loses a point. He starts to dog walk the bike, which is allowed. You can't slide the front tire. You have to dog walk it. You cannot move the bike in any way that is sliding the bike around. You have to dog walk it. So you can see him kind of plotting out what he wants to do. He still ends up taking out a cone and dabbing a couple more times, but in the entirety of the course, that wasn't that many points that he lost compared to other riders. So in this course, he did actually really well. This next rider here, you can see he kind of takes a tight line around this first corner, which he should have went a little bit wider and possibly worked it out a little bit more. And he ends up getting stuck in this really loose soil. And as the day went on, each test site got, you know, worse in my opinion, because it was so dry out and everything that the dirt was just turning to absolute dust. So they weren't able to get as much traction after the first few riders got through. But that's one of the things about it, you know, the courses are meant to be like a real life scenario. So if you were out riding, you know, it's of course the trails are going to get tore up and the spots are going to get tore up. And you need to figure out a way to get out. So this rider, he's actually still on course. He still has some points left, so he's still attempting to go here. But it's just futile efforts, because it's just so hard once you've missed this first turn to get lined out, and then you've got just that little bit of runway to get up and around this corner here. So he ends up falling back here. I shut the camera off, run and help him pick up the bike, and then we're on to our next rider here. So he kind of overshot this corner quite a bit, but he ends up you know, lining it back out and doing pretty well for himself here. So again, you're only disqualified if you're if both your tires are off the course. So if his front or rear goes off at any time, he can still, you know, recover it, because he's still got one tire left on there. And you can see he's dabbing a lot here. We don't count every individual dab a lot of times, because, you know, if they're still in the same spot and they're, you know, putting their foot down once or twice, you know, we don't usually count that. But if they put different feet down, we'll count that as more points lost. So this rider here, he kind of just comes up and tries to really sling it around this corner, which would have worked well, but since he was on a hill, he kind of lost his footing there. And right here, he's still got his back tire on the course. His whole front half of the motorcycle is off course. You can see him trying to reverse it here, and it's just almost impossible. So he's already lost the point for that cone that he's touching, because basically he's knocked it over. It's just kind of leaning up on his bike. He's losing points for dabs right now. He's trying to get the bike back on course, but it's really at this point, you know, you might as well call it quits. And at this point, he really does. He gets down, and I help him get the bike up. He gets turned around. You know, he goes one last go at it, but he realizes he's lost his points, so he kind of just takes off here, and we clean up the course and reset it for the next guy. Now this guy here, he was on a brand new BMW. I don't know what these things cost, but I know they're 15 grand or more, something like that. But anyway, he's on a brand new bike, brand new suit. I don't know how long he's been riding, but you know, he did really well for himself, but he just kind of got hung up in a few spots that really didn't play out well for him. And before the end of this course, he ends up burning out his clutch. Now, I don't know if it was just a bit out of adjustment or if he really burned up the clutch, but you know, later on at lunch, we seen him getting towed back, you know, on a bed in the bed of a
I think he's
truck.
got
So
a
we know that
oil
something
flashing or
happened, and it
something.
probably didn't go
I think
too
it's
well
easy
for
what
him.
that is.
All right, so this next event here was the hair scramble. Basically, it's just a really tight weaving track through trees that are it's really made for small dirt bikes, and they're taking these big bikes through here. So they really have to be on the throttle and kind of slide the rear ends around and really like be able to bounce the front end to be able to move it around some of these trees because it's so tight. I didn't film a lot of this because it's hard to film, you know, in between these trees and stay out of the scorer's way. And there were also a couple guys from BMW here filming for the BMW website that I really didn't want to be getting in their way or anything, you know. So I'm kind of on the outside here filming. The guys had a lot of trouble in some of it because it's just so tight. But some of them end up making it out, and it was a really neat course. I just didn't film it a lot. So this one here was kind of a mediocre log crossing, in my opinion, if you ask me, because they're just such small logs. But I guess it made it a little bit harder because there was a lot of them, and then they had to go between the cones and everything. But really, it was kind of mediocre compared to some of the logs that I've seen in the woods that normal riders cross all the time. So I just caught the very end of this event here. This was the last rider to go through, and he's actually on the smallest bike of the day. And you can see he still had trouble, ended up knocking over 2 of the stakes and losing points. But I didn't get to film a lot of this, but I wish I got more film of this event. All right, so this next event here was called Something Like the Plowed Field. And you can see I caught, you know, came to film right in the middle of this guy's run. He does make it through here, but basically this is a turned soil field, you know, where somebody took a plow out there and just turned all the soil over. So these clumps of dirt were quite large. I mean, these were, you know, big as my chest, some of them, and a lot of these bikes get stuck up on them. You know, there's skid plates on the bottom of the motorcycles get stuck up on top of these. So it can be quite hard to maneuver your bike around a lot of this stuff. This rider here, you can see he comes around the corner and he just can't get going on any of it and ends up dumping the bike because it's just so uneven of ground and not even just your footing. You know, the motorcycle's on completely uneven clumps of dirt, and you know he's got to try to pick it up here and everything, and it can be quite difficult.
Yeah, but it don't matter. It's no big deal, man.
So like I said, in a lot of the events, you know, dropping or stalling the motorcycle, you lose all your points, but some of them have special rules like this one where if you drop or stall the bike, it's not all your points, it's only a certain amount of points lost.
You got it.
So after a while, it kind of took him a bit to get back on the bike to get going here, but he's still high-centered up on top of this dirt clod and throwing up a lot of rooster tail. He does somewhat get the bike going again, but at this point, he's already knocked over the ribbon, dabbed a few times, and lost quite a few points. So this is where the scorer comes over and tells him that he is done on this course. He's lost too many points and he cannot recover. So this next rider here is again on one of the smallest bikes of the day, and he still has quite a bit of problem coming around this. And he actually gets stuck here on this corner. On a normal terrain, you would have been able to just to sling this around with giving a little bit of throttle and leaning the bike, but in these claws, it just hits one to the other and kind of bounces off of it, and you don't really get anywhere. He does eventually get around this and get it going again, but he's still losing quite a bit of points here. So there was the scorer telling him that he only has a few points left, and he's trying to get going here, and ends up kind of overshooting the turn and shooting right off course here, and that's all his. All right, so this is another event that I got to score. So me and my friend over there in the yellow shirt standing to the side there, we were scoring this event. Basically, it's just a bunch of dirt mounds that they have to go over and go between the cones. The cones kind of zig and zag from the left to the right, so they had to kind of go right, left while going over these big humps. And as the day went on, it seemed like the riders had an easier time with it. But the first few riders really just had a hard time figuring out if they needed to have momentum or if they needed to go slow and kind of go, go over it as slow as possible. That way they got a little bit more control. And what would happen would be that they would get stuck on them, and we'd have to pull them off and help them, get off the course. Because once you stop or stall the bike on this one, it would be an automatic point deduction of all your points. So you can't stop, you can't stall the bike, and of course, knocking over cones or putting your feet down would be points lost as well. But as you can see, as the video goes on, the riders do have quite a bit easier time getting over this. And I don't know if that's because the hills get chopped down a bit, or if it's just, they see the rider ahead of them, what they're doing. But we did have to build the mounds back up as best as we could and fill in the holes that they might have made along the way. So here was another one of my favorite events, and you can see that first guy there. He went down pretty hard. He was okay, though. I didn't get to film much of the aftermath because I was, volunteering that day and had to go help him get up. But this was a really hard challenge. Basically, they had to ride up the dirt path on the left side of the cones there, get to the very top, and there's 2 more orange cones with a ribbon. They had to just stop the bike before that ribbon, just touching it without knocking it over, and then slowly kind of go backwards and turn the bike around without stalling it or stopping it. And then they had to come down the hill with both feet on the pegs and the engine running and go between the 2 cones you see at the bottom of the hill there. And that was basically the challenge. But this was a very, very steep hill, and it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look like it on the camera, but it is very steep for these heavy bikes to be on. And I thought I was going to really see somebody get hurt today, because before I got there, I was at the other end scoring the other event, another event, and I could see like a lot of people falling on this, and I was for sure somebody was going to get hurt on this because they were going down hard. Like the first guy you've seen in this clip, he went down really, really hard. And here in a minute, we'll see another guy that goes down pretty hard, but nobody was really hurt. It was just the bikes that were banged up. One guy lost his headlight and his brake reservoir on his front brake on this event, so it was pretty bad. This is the guy that I keep telling you about that did really well, and like everything I watched him do, he did it really well, and did it usually with precision. You can see him dog walking the bike there again. He's really good at it, and he eventually gets the bike turned around here and makes himself a pretty good run on this event. So there he goes, back up on the pegs with the motor running through the cones, and it was pretty good. This one here, I don't know what happened. It just happened quick. I kind of caught this guy in the middle of his run because I was, helping with some other things at the moment. But I caught him when he just got to the top. He made a good run straight to the top and got stopped right there. Kind of takes him a little bit of time to get the bike starting to turn around here, but he eventually starts working it around. This event here doesn't look hard, but not many riders completed. I think only one rider actually got over the thing. I guess it just had such a short start point to get up that little hill from the white signs back there. This event here was probably one of the coolest to watch, just because it's a huge teeter-totter. Really, most of the people made it over. Then one guy I got on film here had a little bit of problem. He just didn't have enough momentum, and he kind of was clutching it up over the center point of balance there. And then at the other side, he just didn't have any momentum to get going down and let off. So this was the last event here. Basically, it's just a berm there that you turn on without hitting the cones and come back out. So anyway, guys, I appreciate everybody watching and hope you all have a good one.